Who was in the Last Supper painting with Jesus? We're gonna break down that question in this video, but today, I'm answering the questions that you've been sending in on social media. So if you have a question you want answered, send it in and I will do my best to answer it as clearly and concisely as I can. And this week's question is, who was in the Last Supper painting with Jesus? Well, let's go look at the painting and see who we can find. Here it is. This painting, The Last Supper, was painted by a man named Leonardo da Vinci, which is probably not surprising. When people think of the Last Supper, they usually picture this painting. But what's interesting about this is that we know that Leonardo da Vinci wasn't a Christian, he wasn't even Jewish. He was an Italian painter, and he painted the Last Supper after reading the account of the Last Supper in the Bible. And so because he didn't necessarily have the background or the context of who these people were, these 13 people around Jesus in this painting, some of them are a little bit off. But let's look at the painting and see who we can identify. There's Jesus in the middle, and again, Leonardo da Vinci actually put himself in this painting as one of the disciples. Can you spot who he put as himself? Here, yep, right there. He's got his eyes closed like he's meditating, thinking deeply. That's Leonardo da Vinci. And we know that because if you look to the left of him, you can see John, who is reclining against Jesus, looking up at him. And then next to John is Peter, and then next to Peter is James, the brother of John, also known as Boanerges. In Mark 3:17, it says that these three were the ones who were with Jesus in the garden just before his crucifixion. So those are the three closest to Jesus, John, Peter, and James, and then around the table we have the rest of the disciples. And some of them, as we've talked about in other videos, are a little bit problematic in this painting. For instance, there's Thomas, and then next to him is one of the sons of Zebedee. Now over here, they all seem to be arguing. And Thomas is known as one of the doubters in John 20 when Jesus appears to him after his resurrection. He says, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger in the holes left by the nails, I will not believe." So maybe that's why Da Vinci made Thomas the one that looks like he's arguing. But the interesting thing is the person next to him is one of the sons of Zebedee. And we don't know his name, we only know that his father's name was Zebedee. And that might be why Da Vinci made him look like he's arguing with Thomas, because they aren't identified in the Gospels, and so we don't know their names. So maybe he wanted to make it clear who was who by making them argue. But there's more. There's one right here, and he looks very much like he's serving the dish. And then there's one here who looks like he's washing the feet of the disciples. So who are these two? The one that's serving the dish is probably Matthew, because in Matthew 23, we read that it was the disciples, all of them, that came together and said, "When you wash the disciples' feet, who is the greatest?" And then Jesus took the towel and washed their feet. So this guy right here is probably Matthew. And the one washing the feet of the disciples would be Philip. Why? Because in John 13, we read that before Jesus washed the disciples' feet, he asked Philip. Simon Peter said, "Lord, why must I wash your feet?" Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Philip said, "Neither do I wash all parts of the body, but only my face and my hands. You should wash yourselves, therefore, and be clean." So the point of the story isn't to memorize who is who in the Last Supper. The point of the story is to show that all 12 disciples, including Jesus, were present at this meal. They were having what we call today a Passover meal, celebrating the Passover, commemorating God passing over the houses of the Egyptians when he brought the 10 plagues and just killing the firstborn sons. They were celebrating that, and while they were celebrating that, Jesus told them he was going to be betrayed. And that's why we call it the Last Supper, because it was the last time they ate together as a group before Jesus was crucified. If you have any other questions, feel free to send them in. I'd love to answer them, and we'll see you next time.